A lonely billionaire unexpectedly discovers a little girl and two children standing at his doorstep. The girl pleads with him to help them. However, he later uncovers a horrifying truth about these children, a truth that would bring anyone to tears. The dining room was as silent as the snowfall outside. Candles flickered atop the polished mahogany table, casting a warm glow on a meticulously arranged meal that no one would share. Adam adjusted his silverware with precision, not because it was necessary, but because he hated disorder, even in the smallest things. Through the expansive windows, Christmas lights twinkled from distant homes. Festivity felt like a foreign language to him, one he neither understood nor cared to learn anymore. This was Adam's domain, sterile, pristine, and impenetrable, much like the man himself. He lifted his wine glass, the red liquid swirling lazily, when a sharp knock echoed through the hall. It was faint at first but insistent, punctuating the stillness like an alarm. Adam paused, his gaze darting toward the massive oak door. Few ever visited, and never without calling first. The knock came again, harder this time. With an exasperated sigh, Adam pushed his chair back and strode toward the door, his footsteps clicking against the marble floor, the sound reverberating through the cavernous space. When he opened the door, the cold rushed in like a thief. Standing there was a girl, small, trembling, and pale as the snowflakes dusting her unkempt hair. What happens next will shock everyone. But before we start, let's do something fun. Comment your location below. Let's see who's watching from a farthest place. All right, let's begin. Please, she gasped, her voice thin and desperate. They're sick. Help them. Adam's eyes shifted downward to the two infants bundled in mismatched blankets in her arms. Their tiny faces were flushed and damp with sweat, their bodies trembling with fever. The girl herself looked barely able to stand, her knuckles white as she clutched the children closer. He hesitated, his mind racing through the possibilities: strangers, intrusion, trouble. But the weak sound of one baby's labored breathing silenced those thoughts. "Come inside," he said curtly, stepping aside. The girl didn't need to be told twice. She stumbled into the foyer, her boots leaving a trail of slush on the immaculate floor. Adam shut the door firmly behind her and turned to face the chaotic scene she'd brought with her. "Put them down there," he instructed, motioning toward a sleek leather couch. She hesitated, looking at him as though weighing his trustworthiness, then carefully laid the babies down. The girl swayed on her feet, clutching her arms as if trying to shield herself from the cold that clung to her. "Sit," Adam ordered, gesturing to a nearby chair. He was already in motion, disappearing down the hall and returning moments later with a medical kit and a thick blanket. Without meeting her eyes, he draped a blanket over her. The girl nodded mutely, her gaze fixed on the twins. "They're burning up," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Adam knelt by the couch, his movements precise and methodical. He checked pulses, felt foreheads, and gently pulled back the damp blankets. "Fevers," he said flatly, but no rash or obvious injury. "How long have they been like this?" I don't know," the girl stammered. "It started yesterday. They wouldn't stop crying, and then they got quiet. Too quiet." Adam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he retrieved a thermometer, measuring each baby's temperature before reaching for a stethoscope. His brow furrowed ever so slightly as he listened to their shallow breaths. "They need fluids and rest. Their fevers will break once I treat the inflammation," he said, standing abruptly. His tone was clipped. "I'll be back." The girl flinched at his abruptness, but didn't argue. Adam disappeared into the kitchen, filling a small bottle with an electrolyte solution he had on hand for emergencies. When he returned, he found her gently stroking one baby's head, murmuring words he couldn't hear. "Here," he said, holding out the bottle. "Give them this. Slowly. Small sips." Her hands shook as she took it. "Thank you." Adam nodded but said nothing, returning to his clinical focus. He wasn't used to this kind of interaction, emotion, gratitude. It unsettled him. After ensuring the twins were stable, Adam turned to the girl. "They'll be fine for now. You should rest." Her lips quivered, and she blinked back tears. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. You don't need to thank me, Adam replied, his voice devoid of warmth. It's basic humanity. But as he looked at her, thin, exhausted, and fragile, something stirred beneath his practiced detachment. He brushed it aside. This wasn't personal. It couldn't be. Stay here tonight, he added after a pause. There's a guest room upstairs. For the first time, the girl smiled faintly, a fragile, fleeting thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you, she whispered again, before sinking into the chair, exhaustion finally overtaking her. Adam turned away, his gaze landing on the children, then the girl, and finally back to the door. Outside, the snow continued to fall, muffling the world. Inside, something had cracked open, just slightly. He didn't know what yet, and perhaps he didn't want to. For now, he had work to do. The clock in Adam's study ticked steadily, its rhythm echoing in the quiet house. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and the lingering scent of pine from the Christmas wreath hanging in the foyer. Adam leaned against the kitchen counter, his eyes fixed on the hallway where Emma had disappeared into the guest room. He had sent her upstairs reluctantly, trusting she'd keep to herself, but uncertain what else to do. In the living room, Lily and Leo lay bundled on the leather couch. Though stable for now, their tiny bodies still bore the marks of neglect. Hollow cheeks, wiry arms, the pale sheen of exhaustion. Adam's jaw tightened as he replayed the scene of Emma cradling them, her entire body braced as if shielding them from an invisible threat. The sight had unnerved him more than he wanted to admit. Returning to the couch, Adam adjusted the blanket over Leo and placed a thermometer under his arm. The child stirred but didn't wake. He jotted down the temperature, then reached for Lily's hand. The faint, rapid pulse beneath her paper-thin skin made his stomach twist. He wasn't used to feeling this concern. No, he corrected himself. It was irritating at being thrust into this situation. At least, that's what he told himself. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, tentative but deliberate. Emma appeared at the base of the staircase, wrapped tightly in an oversized sweater. The sweater Adam had given Emma swallowed her thin frame. Her eyes darted around the room, lingering on the couch, and then on Adam. Are they okay? She asked, her voice soft but edged with worry. Adam straightened, crossing his arms. For now, their fevers are down, but it's clear they've been malnourished. He hesitated, watching her closely. When was the last time they ate properly? Emma's gaze dropped to the floor. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her arms. I don't know. I tried to. I did my best, she stammered, her voice breaking. Adam felt a flicker of something unsettlingly close to guilt. He hadn't meant to accuse her, at least not directly, but the weight of his words had clearly landed hard. Softening his tone, though it still carried his characteristic bluntness, he said, "They need consistent nutrition if they're going to recover fully." He paused, then added, "And so do you." Emma's head snapped up. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. The defensive edge in her voice reminded Adam of a cornered animal. He didn't press her, not yet. Instead, he gestured toward the kitchen. "Sit, eat something." Her hesitation was palpable, but hunger and exhaustion eventually won. She shuffled to the table and perched on the edge of a chair, her posture stiff. Adam placed a bowl of soup in front of her along with some bread and water. She eyed the food cautiously, as though it might be snatched away. "You don't have to guard it," Adam remarked dryly. "I'm not in the habit of feeding people only to take it back." Emma glanced at him, startled, before giving a small, tentative nod. She took a bite, then another, her movements hurried but careful. Adam returned to the couch, resuming his observations of the twins. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the occasional clink of Emma's spoon against the bowl. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "My name's Emma," she said, as if testing the waters. "They're Lily and Leo." Adam didn't look up, but responded evenly. "Adam." More silence followed. He could feel her watching him, her awareness still intact. Emma nodded slowly. "Thank you for helping," she said quietly. "I didn't do it for thanks," Adam said, his tone factual, not unkind, but it made her flinch slightly. The room lapsed into quiet again, and Adam allowed it. He had no intention of prying, at least not tonight. Yet, as he watched Emma rise from the table to check on the twins, the way her small hands adjusted their blankets with such deliberate care, he felt an unfamiliar pang in his chest. Responsibility. That's what it was, he decided. Nothing more. Just as the tension in the room began to ease, Lily stirred violently, a faint whimper escaping her lips. Emma froze, her face paling. Adam was already at her side, lifting the baby gently but swiftly. "She's burning up again," Emma whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "What's wrong?" Adam's focus narrowed, his hands moving with practiced precision. "Calm down," he said, not unkindly but firmly. "She'll be fine." "Are you sure?" Emma's voice cracked. "Yes," Adam replied, without looking up. His attention stayed fixed on Lily. "But I need you to stay composed. I can't work if you're panicking." Emma bit her lip, nodding quickly. She hovered close, her fear palpable, but she obeyed. As Adam worked to stabilize Lily's fever, he felt Emma's gaze on him, wary, but hopeful, like someone clinging to the last branch in a storm. He didn't acknowledge it. Not yet. He had enough on his plate without adding the weight of her trust. For now, his focus was on the fragile life in his hands and the strange sense of duty tightening its grip on his heart. The soft light of dawn crept through the mansion's high windows, illuminating the stark lines of the living room. Adam sat slumped in the chair beside the couch, his shoulders rigid, his face drawn with fatigue. Lily's fever had finally broken a few hours ago, her tiny body now resting peacefully beside her twin. For the first time since Emma had arrived, the house felt still. Emma, perched cross-legged on the floor nearby, had barely moved all night. Her eyes lingered on the twins, as if the act of looking away might undo all of Adam's efforts. She rubbed her arms absently, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You didn't sleep," Adam said, his voice hoarse. It wasn't a question. Emma glanced at him, her expression wary but softening. "Neither did you." Adam didn't respond immediately. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying her. The exhaustion in her features was striking, but behind her guarded gaze was a determination that reminded him of someone he hadn't allowed himself to think about in years. "They're stable now," he said, "but they'll need proper care for a while. You can't keep running like this." Emma stiffened, her shoulders curling inward. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. "You do," Adam replied firmly, though his tone lacked its usual edge. "You can stay here until they're strong enough." After that, he let the sentence trail off, uncertain where it would lead. Emma nodded faintly, her eyes returning to the twins. "Thank you," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Adam stood, stretching the stiffness from his limbs. "You should eat something," he said, gesturing toward the kitchen. When she hesitated, he added, "You'll be no use to them if you collapse." Reluctantly, Emma rose and padded toward the kitchen. The sweater he had given her hung loose around her frame, making her appear even smaller. Adam watched her go, his expression unreadable, as he began tidying up the remnants of his medical supplies. A faint clink caught his attention. He looked down and saw something glinting on the floor near where Emma had been sitting. Picking it up, he felt the cool weight of a silver ring in his palm. The delicate inscription, though faded, was unmistakable. Hope. A small, intricately engraved four-leaf clover sat just beneath the name. Adam's breath caught. His fingers closed tightly around the ring as memory surged, unbidden. Hope's laughter. Her hands brushed his as she placed the very ring on her finger. The way she had looked at him the day she vanished. "Where did you get this?" The words left Adam's mouth sharper than intended, slicing through the quiet like a crack of thunder. Emma froze in the doorway, her hands gripping the edge of the frame. "What?" she asked cautiously. Adam stepped closer, holding the ring between his thumb and forefinger. "This. Where did it come from?" Her gaze darted to the ring, and her expression shifted. First confusion, then recognition, then something deeper. "It was my mother's," she said softly. "She never took it off. When she—" Her voice faltered, but she recovered quickly. "She left it for me. Said it was important." Adam stared at her, the ring suddenly unbearably heavy in his grasp. He forced his mind to focus, to keep from drowning in the questions roaring through his thoughts. "Your mother's name," he said, his voice tight. "What was it?" Emma hesitated, her brow furrowing as if puzzled by his intensity. "Hope," she said quietly. "Hope Ellis." The air between them seemed to still. Adam's grip on the ring tightened, his knuckles whitening. It couldn't be a coincidence, the name, the inscription. It was all too exact, too deliberate. But she was gone. She had been gone for years. He had accepted it. Or so he'd told himself. "Why?" Emma asked, breaking the heavy silence. "Why do you care?" Adam looked at her, his expression inscrutable. "It's nothing," he said, slipping the ring into his pocket with a practiced motion. "Eat your breakfast." The dismissal was sharp, and Emma recoiled slightly, her eyes narrowing. But she didn't push him. Instead, she turned back toward the kitchen, her footsteps hesitant. Alone again, Adam exhaled slowly, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Questions swirled in his mind, but one fact was undeniable. This girl, this child, standing in his home had to be connected to the woman he had loved and lost. But how? As the morning light grew stronger, Adam resolved to find the answers. For now, though, he returned to the twins, pulling the blanket snug around them. His fingers lingered for a moment on their small hands before he straightened. "Who are you, Emma?" he murmured, his voice barely audible in the quiet room. The weight of the past hung heavy in the air, and he knew there was no turning back. The day unfolded slowly, the mansion still wrapped in a muted hush. Adam sat at his desk, the worn ring resting in front of him like an accusation. His laptop hummed faintly as he scoured the internet, fingers methodically typing variations of names and dates. The names stared back at him from several search results, but none of the stories lined up until he dug deeper. There it was, a small obituary buried in an online archive. The date was recent, too recent. His breath caught as he skimmed the text. Survived by her daughter, Emma Ellis, and 2 infant grandchildren, Lily and Leo. The stark reality of it hit him like a blow. Hope had been alive until recently. She had given birth to Emma, to these twins. She had been out there somewhere, while he had been here alone. The sound of soft footsteps interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Adam quickly closed the browser, his face impassive as Emma hesitantly approached. She lingered near the doorway, clutching a mug of tea with both hands. "Are they okay?" she asked, nodding toward the living room where the twins slept. "They're stable," Adam replied evenly. "You should sit down." Emma's eyebrows furrowed, but she complied, sinking into the chair opposite his desk. She took a sip from the mug, her hands trembling slightly. Adam studied her, searching for the right words. "That ring," he began carefully. "You said it was your mother's. Did she ever tell you where she got it?" Emma looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the mug. "No, she just said it was special, that it reminded her of someone she loved." Adam's chest tightened. "What else did she tell you about her past?" Emma shifted uncomfortably, glancing up at him from under her lashes. "Not much. She didn't like talking about it. She said it hurt too much." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She was sad a lot." The vulnerability in her tone tugged at something deep within him, but Adam kept his expression neutral. "And you're your father?" he asked gently. The question made Emma flinch. She set the mug down and folded her arms tightly across her chest, bracing herself. He wasn't kind. Not to her. Not to me. Adam's hands tightened on the edge of the desk. The image of Hope, vulnerable, abused, and abandoned, seared through his mind. He pushed it aside for now, focusing instead on Emma. "You've been taking care of them alone ever since?" he asked, his voice softer now. Emma nodded. "I didn't have a choice," she said, glancing toward the living room, her expression hardening. "They're all I have." The determination in her voice struck him. It wasn't just desperation that drove her, it was love. Fierce, unrelenting love for those 2 children. It mirrored something he once knew, something he thought he had lost forever. Adam leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting toward the bookshelf. Tucked among the medical journals and textbooks was a small leather album, one he hadn't touched in years. He rose, pulling it from the shelf with a deliberateness that made Emma's eyes follow him curiously. He opened the album, flipping through the pages until he found what he was looking for, a photograph, faded but unmistakable. Hope. She stood in the garden of their old home, her head tilted slightly, her smile as radiant as the sun. The ring, the same one now in his pocket, gleamed on her finger. He placed the photograph on the desk, sliding it toward Emma without a word. Emma leaned forward, her brows knitting in confusion. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing the edges of the photograph. "That's my mother," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. She looked up at Adam, her eyes wide. "How do you have this?" Adam didn't answer immediately. His throat felt dry, his heart pounding in a way that unsettled him. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but heavy with unspoken emotion. "I knew her," he said simply. "A long time ago." Emma's confusion deepened. "You knew her," she echoed. "But how? She never mentioned you." Adam's jaw tightened. "There are things you don't know about her past. Things she may not have wanted to remember." Emma leaned back, clutching the photograph as though it might slip away. "Why are you telling me this now?" Adam hesitated, his mind churning. How could he tell her the truth without shattering her already fragile world? And yet, how could he stay silent when every piece of evidence pointed to the undeniable connection between them? "I think," he began cautiously, "there's more to your mother's story than you realize, and I think it's time we both found out the truth." The fire in the hearth crackled softly, filling the room with faint warmth. Emma sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea Adam had given her. The twins were sleeping again, their shallow breaths almost inaudible beneath the thick blankets. The photograph Adam had shown her rested on the coffee table, untouched since she had set it there hours earlier. "You said you knew her," she whispered. Emma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She wasn't looking at Adam, but at the fire, her fingers tightening around the cup. What was she like? Before everything, I mean." Adam, seated in the armchair across from her, hesitated. He had spent the last hour trying to decide how much to tell her, debating whether now was the time to share the tangled emotions he had buried for years. He rubbed a hand across his face, then folded his arms. "She was strong," Adam said at last, his voice measured but distant. Hope had a way of lighting up a room. She was stubborn too. Once she set her mind on something, there was no changing it. Emma's lips twitched, the faintest trace of a smile flickering across her face. "She always told me that," she said softly. "Said I was just like her." Adam nodded, but didn't elaborate. The memories were still raw, even now. Instead, he steered the conversation back toward Emma. What happened after she had the twins? The smile faded from Emma's face. She stared into her tea, her shoulders tensing. "She got sick," she said softly. "It was hard for her to take care of them. I tried to help, but my stepfather, he made it worse." Adam's expression darkened, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "He wasn't like that at first," Emma went on, her voice thick with bitterness. "When they got married, I thought maybe things would be different. But once we moved in with him, it all changed. He'd come home drunk, angry, and take it out on me." Her voice caught, and she blinked rapidly. After the twins were born, she couldn't fight back anymore. She was too weak. Adam leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on his knees. "And after she passed?" he asked carefully. Emma drew in a shaky breath. "He said it was my fault, that if I hadn't been such a burden, she wouldn't have gotten sick. And when the twins cried, he'd yell at me to shut them up. Sometimes he hit me. I tried to protect them, but—" Her voice broke. She clenched her hands into fists. "I couldn't let him hurt them too. That's why I left. I had to." The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of her words settling over them. Adam's jaw tightened as a surge of anger rose within him, not at Emma, but at the man who had inflicted so much pain on her and her mother. The thought of Hope enduring such suffering, and now her daughter facing the same, was almost too much to bear. "You did what you had to," Adam said quietly, his tone firmer than before. "You protected them the best you could. You did good. Emma looked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But it wasn't enough, she said. They're still so small, and I can barely take care of them. If I hadn't found you. You found me for a reason, Adam interrupted, his voice steady. And you don't have to do this alone anymore. The words hung between them, unspoken promises laced with a gravity Adam hadn't fully intended. He saw Emma's guarded expression soften slightly, as if she wanted to believe him, but wasn't sure she could. Adam cleared his throat and rose from his chair, pacing toward the desk in the corner of the room. As he moved, his mind churned with the implications of everything Emma had shared. Her story, though heartbreaking, only deepened his suspicion. The timeline, the circumstances, it all aligned too perfectly with what he knew of Hope's life. Without a word, Adam opened a drawer and pulled out a small DNA test kit. It had been a precaution he'd ordered early in his career, back when patients occasionally needed fast answers. Now, it felt like the only path forward. He returned to Emma, holding the kit in his hands. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked at it. "What's that?" she asked. "Proof," Adam said simply. He sat back down, his gaze steady. "I need to know for sure. About you. About them." Emma's brow furrowed, confusion and suspicion warring on her face. "What are you talking about?" Adam hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I think your mother and I were connected. More than you realize. This test, it could confirm it." Emma blinked, the weight of his words slowly dawning on her. "You mean, you think you knew her? Because of me? Because of us?" "I don't just think," Adam said, his voice low but firm. "I need to be sure." Emma stared at him, her expression shifting between fear and reluctant hope. After a long pause, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "if it means understanding more about her and about you." Adam exhaled, the smallest hint of relief easing the tension in his chest. As he prepared the test, his mind swirled with memories of Hope, her laughter, her warmth, the life they had planned to build together. Now, the possibility of a connection to Emma and the twins brought a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, purpose. But with that purpose came a daunting question. What would he do if the results confirmed what he already suspected? And what if they didn't? For now, Adam pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the fragile hope that had begun to take root between them. The once quiet mansion, with its pristine order and measured silence, began to shift. Laughter, soft and hesitant at first, started to echo down the halls. The smell of warm food filled the air as Adam prepared simple meals, often finding Emma stealing glances at him, as though trying to reconcile the stern doctor with the man now cutting sandwiches into quarters. For her siblings, it was an unspoken truce. Neither mentioned the test, nor the questions it promised to answer. Instead, they existed in a strange, tentative rhythm, finding solace in the time they shared while waiting for the truth. On the third morning, Adam stood in the kitchen, a wooden spoon in hand, stirring a pot of oatmeal. Lily and Leo sat strapped in high chairs he had bought the previous day, their tiny fists grabbing at small pieces of banana he had placed on their trays. Emma hovered nearby, her fingers nervously fiddling with the hem of her sweater. "Sit," Adam said without looking at her. His tone was gentle but left no room for argument. Emma hesitated, then pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. She watched as Adam methodically portioned the oatmeal into bowls, adding a drizzle of honey before placing one in front of her. "You don't have to do all this," she said quietly. "I can take care of them." Adam glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You've done enough," he replied. "It's my turn." The simplicity of his words made her chest tighten. She nodded, looking down at the bowl, unsure how to respond. Later that day, the living room transformed into a play area. Adam sat cross-legged on the floor, his suit jacket abandoned and sleeves rolled up. He was assembling a wooden puzzle for Leo, who giggled as Adam exaggeratedly tried to force the wrong pieces together. "That doesn't go there," Emma pointed out from the couch, a rare smile tugging at her lips. Adam raised an eyebrow, feigning insult. "Are you questioning my expertise?" Emma shrugged. "I'm just saying, even though I know that piece is upside down." With a dramatic flourish, Adam flipped the puzzle piece over, eliciting another laugh from Leo. The sound was infectious, drawing Lily's attention as she crawled toward her brother. Emma slid off the couch to join them, her posture more relaxed than Adam had seen since she arrived. For a moment, the room felt whole. It wasn't perfect. There were cracks in the walls of their lives that couldn't be ignored, but it was warm. And for Adam, it was enough. That evening, as the twins napped upstairs, Adam found Emma in the library. She was curled up in a chair, one of the books he had recommended open in her lap. The soft light from the lamp highlighted the shadows under her eyes, a testament to the exhaustion she still carried. "Do you like it?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Emma looked up, startled, then nodded. "It's different but good." Adam stepped inside, taking the chair opposite hers. For a while, neither spoke. The quiet between them felt less like an absence and more like an unspoken understanding. "Why do you do all this?" Emma asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "You don't even know if we're really connected." Adam's gaze was steady, his voice low. "It doesn't matter if we are. You needed help. That's enough." Emma's throat tightened, and she quickly looked away. "Most people wouldn't help," she said quietly. "I'm not most people," Adam replied simply. By the time the DNA results arrived, the fragile bond between them had grown stronger. Adam found himself lingering in the kitchen longer than necessary, making excuses to check on the twins, even when Emma was perfectly capable. Emma, in turn, had begun to open up more, sharing small snippets of her childhood, her love for books, the way her mother used to hum lullabies, and even the time she tried to bake cookies, but forgot the sugar. The DNA results arrived quietly. A crisp envelope slipped under Adam's office door by a courier. He held it in his hands longer than he intended, his fingers tracing the edges, unwilling to open it just yet. The house was silent. Emma and the twins were resting upstairs, their presence a fragile rhythm that had begun to anchor the emptiness of the mansion. Finally, Adam sat at his desk and unfolded the letter. His breath caught as he read the lines. Emma was his daughter. There was no question. The twins, though not his biological grandchildren, were a part of Hope's legacy, a part of her that had survived. Adam leaned back, the paper slipping from his hand onto the desk. Relief, guilt, and anger churned inside him, a storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm his carefully maintained control. Hope had carried his child, lived through pain and abuse, and had been wrenched away from him by forces he had never suspected. His mind raced back to the letters and medical files he had uncovered the night before, hidden in an old box among his mother's belongings, prescriptions for sedatives signed by doctors long retired, with dates aligning eerily with Hope's disappearance. A letter in his mother's handwriting, cold and calculated, arranging for Hope to be relocated to a distant town. Adam had reread the documents in disbelief, the truth unfolding like a nightmare. It was his mother. His own mother had orchestrated everything, drugging Hope, forcing her to leave, and ensuring Adam believed she had abandoned him. The betrayal hit him with devastating force. Adam clenched his fists, his mind flashing to memories of his mother's sharp gaze, her words always edged with manipulation disguised as care. She had framed it as love, her obsessive need to control his life and legacy. But it wasn't love. It was cruel. The sharp sound of a baby crying pulled him back to the present. He rose instinctively, leaving the papers scattered on the desk, and climbed the stairs to the nursery. Inside, Emma was already holding Leo, her voice soft as she tried to soothe him. Her tired eyes met Adam's briefly, searching for reassurance. "He's just hungry," she said, her voice quieter now that Leo had settled. Adam nodded, moving to adjust the blanket over Lily. The sight of the two small children filled him with a strange mix of sorrow and determination. They weren't his by blood, but they were Hope's. That made them his responsibility, his family in every way that mattered. "Emma," he said after a moment, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you." She looked up at him, her expression wary but open. She had started to trust him in small ways, sharing stories, asking for help with the twins, but the weight of what he was about to reveal could shatter the fragile connection they had built. He hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. "I ran the test," he began, meeting her gaze steadily. "You're my daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Emma froze, her arms tightening protectively around Leo. "What?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know," Adam said, his voice raw. "When your mother and I were together, I didn't know she was pregnant. She didn't leave because she wanted to. My mother." His voice broke, the anger and pain surging forward. "My mother forced her out of my life." Emma's expression shifted, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and something deeper, grief. Her hands trembled as she clutched the edges of the couch, her knuckles turning white. The room spun, Adam's words echoing in her mind. She shook her head, trying to grasp the enormity of what he had just revealed. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice barely audible but laced with anger. She looked up at Adam, her tear-streaked face twisted with disbelief. "This can't be true." Adam leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I'm not lying, Emma. I wouldn't. I have proof, the DNA test, the ring, the photograph. Everything lines up. I didn't know until now. I swear to you I didn't." Her laughter was sharp and hollow, the sound edged with pain. "So what? You're saying you're my father? After everything, now you show up." She stood abruptly, pacing the room, her movements erratic. "Where were you? Where were you when my mom needed you? When do I need you?" Adam's chest tightened at her words, the raw pain in her voice cutting deeper than he had expected. He stood but didn't approach her, his hands hanging limply at his sides, unsure what to do with them. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't know about you, or the twins, or what happened to your mother. If I had," his voice broke, "if I had known, I would have been there." Emma turned to face him, her eyes blazing with anger and grief. "You should have known," she cried. "How could you not know? My mom raised me alone, fought for me alone while you what? Went on with your life like she didn't exist." Adam took a step toward her, his voice soft but firm. "I never forgot her, Emma. Never. Your mother was taken from me, by my own mother." He stopped, his jaw tightening. The words were difficult to say, even now. She orchestrated everything. She made sure Hope was gone, and I believed her lies. I thought I had lost her forever. Emma's breath hitched at his confession, her expression shifting from fury to something more fragile. Confusion, hurt, disbelief. "You're blaming your mother for all of this?" she asked, her tone skeptical but wavering. "Yes," Adam said, his voice resolute. "I found the evidence, Emma. The letters, the prescriptions, everything. My mother, she manipulated everything. She took Hope away because she didn't think we belonged together. And now I have to live with that." Emma stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly as she tried to process his words. The silence between them grew thick, broken only by the soft coos of one of the twins stirring in the bassinet. Her anger slowly began to ebb, replaced by the overwhelming weight of the truth. "Why now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why tell me this now?" Adam's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, he allowed his vulnerability to show. "Because I owe you the truth. You deserve to know who you are, where you come from. And I want to be here for you, for the twins, for the family I didn't even know I had." Emma's eyes filled with tears again, her defenses cracking under the weight of his sincerity. She sank back onto the couch, her hands covering her face as sobs racked her body. Adam hesitated only a moment before kneeling in front of her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "I know I can't change the past," he said softly, "but I can promise you this. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Emma lowered her hands, her tear-streaked face filled with a mix of anger, grief, and the faintest glimmer of hope. "How do I trust you?" she whispered. "After everything, how do I know you won't leave too?" Adam's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "Because I lost Hope once. I won't lose you too. I promise, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to you." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and for the first time, Emma didn't pull away. She nodded slowly, though her expression remained guarded. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she admitted. "Not yet." Adam nodded. "I don't expect you to. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The fragile moment of connection was interrupted by a soft cry from the bassinet. Emma rose quickly, picking up Lily and cradling her against her chest. As she soothed the baby, her voice was softer when she spoke again. "There's something else," she said, her words hesitant. "My stepfather, he's dangerous. He might be looking for us." Adam's jaw tightened, his protective instincts surging. "He won't touch you or the twins," he said firmly. "I'll make sure of that." Emma looked at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt, and finding none. She nodded again, her grip on Lily tightening as if seeking reassurance. For the first time in years, Adam felt a flicker of purpose. The road ahead would be long, fraught with pain and challenges, but he was ready to face it for Emma, for the twins, and for Hope's memory, which lived on in them all. Suddenly, a loud, insistent knock echoed through the house. Nothing like the hesitant tapping that had brought Emma to his doorstep weeks ago. Adam froze mid-step, his body going rigid. The twins were asleep in the living room, and Emma, seated beside them, looked up at him, her face paling. "Stay here," Adam said, his voice low but firm. He strode to the door, heart pounding, the instinctual urge to protect coursing through him, sharp and unyielding. When he opened the door, the man standing on the porch was exactly who Adam feared he would be. Broad-shouldered and unkempt, his coat dirty, his face flushed from the cold, or perhaps from anger. His eyes scanned the entryway before landing on Adam with a sneer. "You must be Adam," the man said, his voice gruff, laced with derision. "Where's Emma?" Adam stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "She's safe," he said evenly, his voice calm but edged with warning. "And she's staying here." The man scoffed, leaning closer, his breath puffing out in frosty clouds. "That's funny. She's my responsibility. My house, my rules. She belongs to me." Adam's hand gripped the edge of the door, his knuckles white. "Emma is not your property," he said coldly. "She's not going anywhere with you." The man's face darkened. He stepped forward, forcing Adam to brace himself. "Listen, Doc," he sneered. "You don't know anything about us. She's my stepdaughter. And those kids," he jabbed a finger past Adam, "they're a drain. She's coming home, where she belongs." Behind Adam, a faint sound caught his attention. He glanced over his shoulder and saw Emma standing at the edge of the hallway, Lily balanced on her hip, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Emma," Adam said softly, trying to keep his tone steady. "Take the twins upstairs." Her gaze darted to the man at the door. "No," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "He'll just keep coming." The man smirked, spreading his arms wide. "She's a smart one, isn't she?" Adam turned back to him, his jaw tightening. "You're trespassing," he said coldly. "Leave now, or I'll call the authorities." The man laughed, a grating, unpleasant sound. "And what are you going to tell them? That I'm here for my family? Good luck with that." Adam took a step forward, forcing the man to retreat slightly. "Emma has told me everything," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "About the abuse, about the threats. If you think you can intimidate her again, you're mistaken." The man's smirk faltered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," Adam said, his tone cutting. "And I'm sure the authorities will be very interested in hearing about it." For a moment, the man seemed to waver, his bravado faltering. Then, snarling, he shoved Adam's shoulder in a burst of frustration. Adam barely moved, his years of resilience keeping him steady. "That's assault," Adam said flatly, pulling his phone from his pocket. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." The man froze, his eyes darting to Emma. "You don't want to do this, kid," he warned, his voice dripping venom. "You think he's going to protect you forever? You'll come crawling back." Emma didn't flinch, though her grip on Lily tightened. Her voice was steady. "I'm not going back," she said, trembling but firm. "Not ever." The man's face twisted in rage, but before he could respond, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Adam stepped back, his hand still on the door, as two police officers pulled into the driveway. I called them before I answered the door, Adam said, his voice steady. This ends now. The man glared at him, then at Emma, his expression a mix of rage and defeat as the officers approached swiftly, forcing him to step back after a brief exchange. He was handcuffed and led to the patrol car, his protests echoing in the cold air. Adam closed the door, the silence inside the house almost deafening. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, her shoulders trembling as tears began to spill down her cheeks. Adam approached her slowly, his hands gentle as he took Lily from her arms and set the baby back in the bassinet. "It's over," he said softly, his hands resting on her shoulders. "He can't hurt you anymore." Emma collapsed against him, her sobs muffled against his chest. Adam held her, his grip firm and steady, as she let the fear and tension of the past weeks drain away. For the first time, he felt her trust, in the way she leaned on him, no longer bracing herself to run. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "for everything." Adam tightened his hold, his own throat thick with emotion. "You're safe now," he said. "You and the twins. I won't let anyone hurt you again." As the night deepened, the house grew quiet once more, but the stillness felt different this time. It wasn't the oppressive silence of fear or loneliness. It was the beginning of something new, a sense of safety, of family. And for the first time, Emma believed it. The morning was unusually bright, sunlight streaming through the frost-tipped windows of the mansion. Adam sat at the dining table, his fingers drumming against the polished wood, the legal documents spread out before him. The weight of the decision he was about to make pressed heavily on his chest. But it wasn't uncertainty that gripped him. It was the enormity of what lay ahead. Emma entered the room cautiously, Lily cradled on her hip and Leo toddling beside her. She had a way of looking both determined and unsure at the same time, as though she were constantly bracing for the ground to give way beneath her. "You're up early," she said, her voice soft but laced with curiosity. Adam gestured toward the chair across from him. "Sit down. We need to talk." Emma hesitated, shifting Lily to her other arm before settling into the chair. Leo, sensing the seriousness in the room, clambered onto her lap and pressed his small hands against her chest. Adam pushed the papers toward her, his jaw tightening as he watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief. What is this?" Emma asked, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the documents. "Adoption papers," Adam said, his voice steady. "I've spoken to a lawyer. Once these are filed, you and the twins will be legally recognized as my family." Emma stared at him, her eyes wide. "You mean you're adopting us?" Adam nodded. "It's the only way to ensure your safety. Legally, no one can take you away from me. Not your stepfather, not anyone." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Adam replied. "This isn't just about what's right, it's what I want. I've spent too many years convincing myself I didn't need a family. I was wrong." Emma looked down at the twins, her lips trembling. "Are you sure about this? Taking on all of us, it's not easy." Adam's voice softened. "Emma, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and these two," he nodded toward the twins, "are all that matters now." The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, signatures, and legal jargon. Adam worked tirelessly to expedite the process, his reputation and resources cutting through the usual red tape. Each step brought a mixture of relief and trepidation. At the courthouse, Emma sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The twins were with a trusted caretaker for the day, leaving the two of them to face the proceedings alone. Adam glanced at Emma, noticing the way she bit her lip nervously. "You're doing fine," he said quietly, his voice meant to reassure. Emma nodded but didn't meet his gaze. It feels like a dream. Like any minute, someone's going to come in and say it's not real." Adam reached over, placing a steadying hand on hers. "No one's going to take this away from us. I promise." When the judge finally reviewed the documents and declared the adoption valid, Emma let out a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with tears she didn't bother to hide. Adam felt something in his chest ease, a release of tension he hadn't even realized he'd been holding. "It's official," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're a family." Emma turned to him, her face breaking into a smile so radiant it momentarily erased the years of hardship etched into her features. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Back at the mansion, Adam carried Lily in his arms, while Emma helped Leo waddle toward the living room. The adoption certificate sat framed on the mantel, a silent testament to the day's events. That evening, as the twins fell asleep in their shared crib, Emma stood at the doorway of their room, watching them with a mixture of love and disbelief. Adam joined her, his presence a quiet but reassuring shadow. "They look so peaceful," Emma murmured. "They are," Adam said, "because they know they're safe. And so are you." Emma turned to him, tears brimming once again. "I've never had anyone fight for me like this." Adam placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but gentle. "You're worth fighting for, Emma. All three of you." As the stars began to shimmer outside, Adam realized that this wasn't just a legal obligation. It was a second chance, a chance to rebuild everything he thought he'd lost. Together, they would face whatever came next, not as strangers, but as a family, bound by love, resilience, and the unshakable promise of a better future. The first snow of the season blanketed the mansion in soft, glistening white, muffling the world beyond its gates. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace crackled in the living room, casting golden light over the scene of a family finally at peace. Emma sat cross-legged on the plush rug, surrounded by Lily and Leo. The twins squealed with delight as they played with the brightly wrapped presents Adam had carefully chosen for them. Their giggles filled the room, a melody of innocence that made the space feel alive in a way it hadn't in years. Adam watched from the armchair, a mug of steaming cocoa in his hand, his lips curved into the faintest smile as he observed the chaotic joy before him. For the first time in years, he felt truly at home. The silence that had once haunted Adam was now replaced by a comforting hum of life. It was messy, unpredictable, and entirely perfect. "Adam," Emma called, her voice pulling him from his thoughts. She held up a wooden puzzle piece, a sly grin on her face. "You're the expert on these, right? Care to help?" Adam sat down, shaking his head with mock exasperation. "If I recall correctly, you were the one critiquing my skills last time," he teased. Emma laughed, a sound so free and genuine it startled even her. "Well, now's your chance to redeem yourself," she challenged. He knelt beside her, taking the puzzle piece and examining it with exaggerated seriousness. Lily crawled into his lap, babbling happily, while Leo clapped his tiny hands together, watching the scene unfold. Adam guided the piece into its rightful place, earning a triumphant cheer from Emma. "See," he said, his voice warm. "Not bad for an old man." Emma rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress her smile. "Fine, you win this round." The room fell into a comfortable quiet, save for the crackle of the fire and the soft sounds of the twins playing. Adam leaned back against the couch, Lily still perched in his lap, her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so small. "You're good at this," Emma said suddenly, her voice soft. She glanced at him, her expression somewhere between admiration and gratitude. Being a dad, Adam's chest tightened, but this time it wasn't from fear or doubt. "I didn't think I'd have the chance," he admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "Not after everything." "You do now," Emma replied firmly, "and you're doing more than enough." Her words settled over him like a balm, easing the lingering doubts that had plagued him. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just the resilient girl who had stumbled into his life, but a strong, determined young woman who had fought for her family with everything she had. "Thank you," Adam said, his voice steady, "for trusting me." Emma blinked, startled by the sincerity in his tone. "Thank you," she whispered back, her voice trembling slightly, "for giving us a home." Later that evening, after the twins had been tucked into bed, Adam and Emma sat by the fire, sharing the quiet moment. Emma sipped from her mug of tea, her legs curled under her, while Adam stared into the flames, lost in thought. "Do you ever think about her?" Emma asked, breaking the silence. Adam turned to her, his brows furrowing slightly. "Hope," Emma nodded, her gaze steady. All the time, he admitted. But it's different now. For so long, I thought about what I lost, about what I couldn't fix. He paused, the flickering firelight casting shadows across his face. But now, I think about what she gave me. You, them. Emma swallowed hard, her throat tightening with emotion. She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. She'd be proud of you, of what you've done for us. Adam's expression softened, and he covered her hand with his. She'd be proud of you too, more than you know. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly, its warmth filling the room as snow continued to fall outside. Emma stood by the window, looking out at the frosted garden. Adam joined her, his hands in his pockets. "It's beautiful," she said, her breath fogging the glass. "It is," Adam agreed, though his gaze was fixed not on the snow, but on the family they had become. Behind them, the room was filled with reminders of the day. Presents half unwrapped, Lily's blanket draped over the couch, and the adoption certificate proudly displayed on the mantel. It was a home, not just in structure, but in spirit. Emma turned to Adam, her eyes shining. "Thank you for everything." Adam smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "This is where you belong." For Adam, Emma, Lily, and Leo, this winter marked not just the end of a year, but the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and the unshakable bond of family. And for the first time in a long time, the warmth in Adam's heart rivaled even the glow of the fire beside them. Did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, how powerful was this tale? Smash that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a story that stirs your soul. For more heart-racing, emotional tales, tap the end screen now.